What's good? It's Fevir. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about Mew Legend, and interestingly enough, I wasn't going to make a video about this game. In fact, it's been quite a while since I last played or even thought about this game, and that's less of a commentary on Mew Legend itself, and more that there have just been some really big and great games that overshadowed it for me. However, more recently, due to some excitement building about the new Pad and Exile update coming, I journeyed back into Rayclast, and every time I play an action RPG, I quickly remember that, like, hey, I like these. But I quickly fizzled out of Pad and Exile. For whatever reason, that game just never has grabbed me the way that it does to others, and immediately what came to mind was Mew Legend. And so, if this game wasn't on your radar for any reason, that's fair, but for action RPG fans, there might be something here, so let me take a bit and let you in on what's good with Mew Legend. So I initially brushed the game off because I did what I preach so many people not to do. As I was playing the game, I was comparing the experience to what I expected it to be. I haven't played the past Mew game at all. I don't even know if it's Mew or Moo or MU. Like, I have no frame of reference for this game at all. And I didn't know anything going into it. I went in blind, except I had heard offhand that it was one of those MMORPG action RPG hybrids. And that was a very unfair labeling, as Mew Legend at its core is a hack and slash aRPG that is as much of an MMORPG as, say, Pad and Exile, which is just another aRPG, but once you move out of the lobby-based action RPGs, you really need to start splitting hairs trying to assert a specific label. And, you know, I'm gonna try not to waffle on that for too long here. So what made an impact to me is that Mew Legend is an action RPG more like Diablo 3 than any others. And whether that others is Torchlight or Diablo 2 or Pad and Exile or Grim Dawn, and if you're a fan of the genre, you may understand the core differences between those games. I would consider Diablo 3, outside of just presentation, a much more rigid and more streamlined, less open style of action RPG. And because of some vocal criticism towards Diablo 3, what has happened is a lot of games that have been released since have tried not to build on what Diablo 3 is, but instead have tried to recapture and build on what Diablo 2 was. But I liked Diablo 3, and Mew Legend takes a lot of inspiration from Diablo 3. It looks to build on that experience. In fact, there are pretty much one-to-one reskins of features found in Diablo 3 found in Mew Legend. Some of them aren't uncommon in these types of games, like the way that items work, like the way that the questing in the story mode works, like the unending, progressively harder dungeons like Greater Rift, or varying difficulties of the same versions of maps and dungeons that have increased loot or difficulty, sort of like the Torment scale in Diablo, or a secondary character leveling system in this game called Soul Levels that work and look exactly like Paragon levels. However, it starts to get funky when they start almost copying UI elements, or the artifact system, which allows you 3 powerful artifacts, which is basically identical to the 3 legendary gems, where they have an initial wacky power, and they level up, and at thresholds they have a new unlocked power, and you choose from a large amount of defined gems, or defined artifacts. Not to mention these types of orbs that look and act much like the health globes or the Nephilim globes from Diablo 3, or even their own version of treasure goblins. The coincidences keep going up, and to be honest, I don't even hold it against them, because as much as people harp on Diablo 3, the thing that works the most against that title was comparing it to others is that it didn't have the post-launch content that compares to other games in the long term. So you could really not so much finish Diablo 3, but you could play a couple hundred hours and just be done. You could get to a point where there wasn't anything new or exciting to look forward to, and there was nothing new on the horizon that was going to be released for the game. Whereas if you take a short break from, say, Pad and Exile, you come back and they've added an entirely new system and they've started a league with a unique rule set. Those games have constant flows of post-launch content. And Mew Legend is kind of like if they kept adding stuff to Diablo 3, but it was just reskinned into Mew, right? Like they have this wing system that acts like another form of character progression to add on to the basic and Soul or Paragon level. They have this pet system, which really just boils down to collecting a new type of item that gives a different type of bonus that, instead of wearing, follows you around. And again, you choose between a whole bunch of different ones, and those can level up on their own. They add additional ways to augment your abilities. There are way more things that are are tracked and ranked in the ladder type system that they have. They have dungeons designed for solo players, designed for groups. There's just more things to challenge you, a damage meter recap, which I really liked more than I should have, a PvP system, and just different ways to PvP. So it's like if Mew Legend really nailed being a high quality Diablo 3 knockoff, but it kept developing the game moving forward, and normally I'd pass on a knockoff, but Diablo 3 stopped developing. And what I think really separates Mew Legend for me from all other action RPGs, and why I thought of it as soon as I uninstalled Pad of Exile, is the level of polish. The fluidity and the controls all just feel great. It's one of those things I probably value a little bit too high. It's one of those things that Blizzard does incredibly well, making the act of playing their game not only fun, but feel good. When I play Pad of Exile, it feels, to bring a word back from earlier, rigid, almost too precise. The controls just feel a little bit off. And when I played Grim Dawn, everything felt floaty. You take the gameplay away, and Diablo 3 feels and controls just so nice, and Mew Legend controls just like that. And you can already make a decision for yourself on the visuals, but just the overall polish and presentation of this game is ridiculously high, especially considering that this is all from the beta, and what value you actually assign to the term beta test is up for argument, but it is one of the more polished, in-testing, pre-release games that I have played. And this is, I guess, where I'll make this broad statement. The polish and controls of Mew Legend are good enough for me to want to play it. The polish and controls of more recent aRPGs are not good enough for me to want to play them, or they leave me wanting to play a different game that does it better. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times I've been like, man, I wish that all of the game of Pad of Exile was put into the Diablo 3 engine. And I make this statement because I understand that if you are absorbed by just standard Pad of Exile, a game like this might feel like a step down in almost every regard. But there are people who are still playing Diablo 3. There are people who, like me, just can't get into Pad of Exile or this new wave of more indie-feeling aRPGs, and this gives us an option that is at least 8 times better than Divillion. Now, the caveat to all of this is that the game has had a very short testing period, so I haven't spent nearly enough time in the game to know if this is something that could hold my attention over the long term or as long as other games have. That said, it's free. Or rather, it will be free to play when it's released, but that said, it's a Webzen game. But that said, the original Mew was a bit of a cult classic, so people are going to want to play it regardless. But all of that said, let's be honest, with Mew Legend, even if it is great, it's probably just going to serve as a stopgap until Lineage Eternal or Lost Ark comes out. All I know is that I really want to dig more into this in the next testing phase, but for me, for now, that's going to do it. Until next time, this is Fevir. Peace.